Okay, so let's just reintroduce myself. I'm Dr. Lianne Hawkins and I'm Chief Operating Officer of Coalescent Limited, which is where CoLiberty now lives. I guess I'm responsible for every single implementation of the CoLiberty product across the board, and also the product itself and the roadmap as we go into the coming years and LPS is rolled out. I just wanted to kind of touch on some of the experience and stuff we've been exposed to, I suppose, which I think is really important. I know the LPS has been mooted around for nearly 2 years now, and not masses of information has come directly from the centre at times. But I suppose just to give you some confidence as to who we are and where we've come from and what sort of exposure we've had. So as well as the funding coming from NHS Digital, LGA, and those collaborating local authorities that we talked about this morning, we have been heavily involved with the group at DHSC, particularly the original group that formed around LPS, and indeed contacts within ADAS as well, who are leading lots of this work. So we've been exposed to certainly a lot more than others, which has been fantastic from our perspective. And learning from all the current goals processes, all the pain in that, and then taking our understanding of what LPS is likely to bring. So I suppose all of that has come together to shape the resulting product. While LPS isn't here, it will be coming, as I said earlier. I'm quite sceptical myself if we will see, if any delay, certainly any significant delays beyond April this year. Maybe some very minor ones, but they are under so much pressure to get this rolled out. It's very politically sensitive, so they're keen to see this happen. So let's jump straight into a demo of the product. Let myself out so you can see. There we go. So the resulting product, software as a service. So from an IT perspective, actually the requirements are very, very minimal. The only thing that you'll need to think about is your internet connection, everyone has one, and access to a modern browser. Again, you're all using browsers to access what you're using now, so none of that is an issue at all. We support all the browsers that are on gov.uk as being the ones that we should be supporting. So the public sector generally are all using a modern browser of some description as outlined on gov.uk, which is great. We do also do single sign-on if that's something of interest. We've got very established quick processes to get that set up for you. So you're either looking to use our own identity stuff secured with multi-factor authentication, or you can look to implement single sign-on and whatever it is you're using, Active Directories or whatever within your own organisation. So the homepage then, you would each be looking to get your own instance. Each responsible body has their own instance of the product. And I'll talk a bit in a second about that information sharing across responsible bodies and how that works from a sort of technical perspective as well. So the homepage, a little bit about the features and functions of the product, but largely everyone knows what role they have to play in this process, so they're coming here to sign in or log into the platform.
Sorry, Lianne, I can hear background noise from somebody over you quite a lot.
No problem. If there's anyone that's got their mics on, if you could mute them, that would be great. I think, is it? Might be Auntie's got muted. Looks like, okay, that sounds like that's probably much better. Great, super. Okay, so logging in with your identity, either single sign-on or using your own, and then depending on the role that you have in the system, so whether you're administrating the LPS process, whether you're an assessor, whether you're a consultative person, care homes, hospital, nurses on the wards, all those sorts of things will depend on what your dashboard looks like. So they're tailored to the type of user that you are. I've signed in as someone essentially with kind of the max permissions. I'm able to manage the caseload, the entire caseload, for the responsible body, and indeed I have a side permission which allows me to authorise or otherwise deprivation of liberty. So when you land on here, it will show you everything that's kind of going on in your world, everything that you need to be looking at from a review perspective. Because I administrate the process, I'm looking at what my caseload looks like in terms of unresolved requests as well. So first thing I'm going to touch on is that sharing piece, and then I'll show you the more kind of generalist case management functionality and collaborative assessment piece as well. So when you're here to, one second, the doors are really, really thick here. As soon as we shut them, which someone has just done, it cuts up my internet. I'll be 2 seconds. Cool, that'll do. Sorry, someone thought they'd be really helpful by keeping my noise out, but actually it just cuts out my connection entirely. Okay, so when the first part in the process, obviously, is for you to look at potentially requesting your authorization. Okay. So looking at requesting an authorization of some sort, so we could look to trigger the process here. What you might want to do first is see if there's any history or assessments that are coming that are already known about this person, not only within your own responsible body, but within another. And I'm going to cover the questions that you asked earlier about how that works and what the agreements that we have in place are. So this here gives a search across either your own, and that's your own sort of internal search, or an external search. They both look exactly the same, but one is an internal look at the organisation, and one is looking essentially nationally at anyone that is using this product. So here we have some various sort of parameters around what we're looking for, and we can of course use NHS number, which NHS Digital have asked quite specifically that NHS number is a mandatory field in this process for all sorts of reasons. One, funding it, so we were keen to kind of hear what their viewpoint was, but also from a kind of a national standards perspective. And if you are all really serious about wanting to share history and assessments across the board, given the types of organisations that you are, NHS number is the one unique identifier that we have across all of those different settings. So either looking across various parameters or uniquely at the NHS number, that will flag individuals that match that criteria. So once you've searched across that, there is there. So I do have a listing in here. Clearly someone was trying to deprive me of my liberty at some point, but that will search across any deprivation of liberty that we have either internally or indeed with any other organisation that are using this product. Now here comes some of that caveat stuff. So regionally, you're quite likely to be sharing, or there's more sharing that's going to happen. With your local hospital, with the local authority, the CCG. There's probably a handful of you that know on a quite regular basis that there's going to be that need. So in those cases, what we do is we work with the group of them, and typically the product is taken on a regional basis, which is fantastic. We're seeing kind of pockets across the country where they're taking CoLiberty across the local authority, the CCG, and the hospitals in the area. And where that's the case, it makes sense for us to have an information sharing agreement in place between us all. And in that process, we agree what it is out of the box that we're willing to share. And that could be granular. We don't have to kind of agree to share everything. We can agree to share certain pieces of information off the bat. And then anything beyond that can be taken offline and agreed on a one-to-one basis. So wherever those information sharing agreements are in place, you can get hold of that information within the platform itself. So you'll get access to all the history and assessments that the hospital holds on this person, before you even start looking at commencing your own deprivation of liberty processes. So that's the ideal world. We have an information sharing agreement in place, you've all agreed to share, and you can just get hold of each other's stuff and do that. That's probably not possible on a national basis for you all to agree what it is you're going to share with every other responsible body in the country. So we have a slightly different model for where those information sharing agreements don't exist. So for example, I'm down on the south coast and maybe there's someone up in Yorkshire, and given the parameters that I've entered, I will be shown that Lianne, there is some data on Lianne in this system. Now, I don't have an information sharing agreement in place. So what happens at this point is the information that I'm given is not information within the platform. I'm given a contact within that responsible body. So let's say in York, to say, oh, this is the Dole's administrator at York, and we know that given the parameters you've searched for, we know that Lianne exists there. Here's a contact for the administrator at York. Go and have a conversation with them about what it is you're willing to share. And then that administrator will agree all of that, and then they can then share with you through the platform whatever it is that you've agreed that you will share with each other. So whilst you're not getting hold of their assessments and history instantly, you are being at least pointed to another responsible body that does have the information that will be probably quite useful to you, so you can have that conversation offline and then share whatever it is you've agreed to share within the platform itself. So Paul, does that answer those sorts of questions you were floating earlier about how that works?
So, sorry, yes, it does. I've been trying to turn on my camera, but it's not working. So.
No worries. Great, fab. So that's actually there are two models for this. Either you've got the information sharing agreement in place and the system will just share whatever it is that you've agreed to share, or there isn't, and it just gives you the contact. It flags that yes, that person does exist in this responsible body, and they'll give you a contact, say, for the administrator there to agree that process offline. Right, so, and the information that you're looking at sharing, essentially, if you've got the information sharing agreements in place, will be all these sorts of things. So they're at the time, their eligibility check, what their request, what the initial referral looked like, what their assessments look like, and then whatever the authorization is at the end. So that's the sharing piece. I'm now going to kind of go back to the start of the process and show you how we actually trigger this stuff. So if you're right at the front of the process and you're looking to essentially trigger or refer, whichever kind of models you've got in place, you'll be looking to start here with request and authorization. One of the things that we focus really carefully on in this product, and these are just my details, I'm just checking that they're correct and we'll move on through that, is we know that unlike in Dole's, where you had all these expert assessors that are running that process at the moment, we know under LPS, potentially you're looking at more generalist staff having to play a much more frontline role in these processes, social workers, nurses in the wards and things like that. So they absolutely have solid understanding of this stuff, but they aren't the expert assessors that we've had previously. So the whole point of this product was to kind of accept that and then work with it. So simplify the process as much as possible. Let's just get someone in here first. And I'll show you how we're kind of hand-holding people through these processes. That'll do. And a unique. So that's quite a useful show there. Whilst in the demo instance, we keep as few fields as possible mandatory, because otherwise we're going to be here forever. In our production instances, they very much are sort of all mandatory fields, and there's heavy field validation on here, so you're never receiving assessments, or you're never receiving referrals that are incomplete. So you'll notice that as we go through that there's areas where the field validation will kick in, but particularly in our demo instance, we keep that light so that we can get through these demos pretty quickly. Okay, so first example here then, these are not, by the way, the LPS criteria. We're subject to an NDA, and therefore I'm unable to put the LPS forms and the LPS criteria up in here at the moment, but I can certainly talk to you about how they're subtly different or very different in certain areas. But for those that are involved in the DOLS processes, you will spot this immediately, that these are DOLS terms and DOLS criteria and DOLS forms, but I'll talk about where the LPS stuff comes in. So first point in the process, these are potentially generalist staff, they're not experts in the process. Let's check that this person is eligible first. So the way that we approach that is through these sort of triage questions, yes and no answers. Ask the question where we feel like these questions warrant further explanation. We put in these green text boxes to say these questions are not the LPS criteria, but as and when we're allowed to put that publicly, we will change all of this to the right criteria. But the process is exactly the same. Let's check the criteria. Let's explain what all these terms mean and support these non-expert users through completing these processes with quality. So things like, what does continuous supervision and control mean? Well, we outline that based on all of our connections, our customer base that has the subject matter expertise within it, and ADAS and DHSC, and we write all that guidance in line with what essentially the industry best practice says. So 5 questions, yes and no, and it will only let you proceed if you meet the criteria. If I say no to this question, it says here, this is probably not the process that you should be putting this person through. So sort of stop here. So you're not going to be receiving referrals where this isn't right. You still have access to this as a responsible body, so you can always come back and just check on this. The referral was never submitted because they weren't eligible, but at least let's go and see what that assessment said before you kind of write them off. So you can step in proactively if you need to. So I've conformed to all of that criteria and that eligibility, so I'm going to go another step. And now essentially we've got the initial trigger form or the referral form, whichever your processes might be. I'm not going to fill this in, it will be here forever. Those that are familiar with the DOLS processes will recognise this as the form 1. The LPS versions, as I say, we have, we just aren't allowed to publicly show them at this point. What we will have though, whilst DOLS is sort of dependent on how the care is funded as to which supervisory body this goes to, LPS doesn't work like that. It is not about how the care is funded, it's about where the person resides and all those other things. So whilst this is the wrong question to ask, this is the right point in the process to establish who the responsible body is. So in some settings that's really obvious. If you're in the hospital, then that's obvious. Out in the community, maybe not so much. So this would be the point in the process that we're just checking which is the responsible body that we're routing this to. So based on a few questions that we'll ask here, we'll then dictate who that referral is routed to. So again, asking questions, details of care. Well, what on earth do we mean by that? And so we set that out, giving potentially as much guidance and as many examples of what we're asking for here. So really hand-holding users through these processes and getting the quality answers from them. I'm going to spin through the rest of this form. It all looks exactly the same. It's a data capture. It's got strict field validation on it in our production versions. So these assessments are always complete and you're not receiving part bits of information. And we will get to the next point in the process. It's always the shortest route possible through the form. So you'll notice here, as I check this box, it's only at that point that I have these additional fields unveiled to me. So you're always keeping this as short as possible, only expanding the form and asking questions when necessary. So last couple of fields. Okay, so this might fail. I might have missed one of the required fields, but if it does, it will tell me exactly where I'm failing and why, and I can jump in and fix that. But no, I have actually completed that form. As far as the demo instance is concerned, I fully completed that form. It would totally fail in all of our production instances because I haven't completed that form fully. So now we're moving on to the next step, and what that has done is created our case. So we have our eligibility check and we can revisit that. We have that referral form and we can revisit that. This has now routed that referral to the relevant responsible body, and I said probably, quite likely, that their DOS admin teams are then the people that are going to pick this up. We have various different models, so if you're not operating that, hospitals often don't operate in that way, or haven't decided to operate in that way. So we have different models that work depending on what your workflow is locally. It's very configurable in that regard. So up here, we take out all the information that is potentially going to be duplicated left, right, and centre. So you won't ever be asked again for any of this information. It will just pre-populate any of the fields where this is asked. And again, in any of these forms as well, if there is any duplication, it will take that forward into other forms. So you're totally removing any need for double entry of anything that might need to be repeated multiple times. What you also have here is just another reminder to go and search for duplicates. So if I was to click this button, it would then run the search parameters based on this information here, and it will tell me if there are or aren't any duplicates. So there are no requests found for Dan. That Dan doesn't exist in any other responsible body that are using this product. If there were, it would do what I said earlier. It would either give you direct access to Dan's information page. It would give you access to Dan's information, or it would just give you the contact at that responsible body if there wasn't an information sharing agreement in place. So here we are back with Dan. I can also, if I know at this point, if I'm an administrator, if I've looked at the information available to me and we just think that this is probably going to be an AMCP case, we can drop that label in at this point as well, or it can be added at any point in the future. So if after reviewing this and his referral, we're going to say, yeah, do you know what, this person does need to be moved on for assessment. So the way that we do that is we add those assessments into this list of tasks that we're doing on Dan. So we'll add that there, and we'll say, right, we're going to do this best interest necessary and proportionate assessment again, not necessarily LPS terms, but once we're allowed to, we will drop in all the right terminology and all the right assessment forms. Potentially as well, you might be looking to trigger other assessments here as well, but let's go with this one first. It will highlight in purple to say that, yes, I've selected that one. And now it's going to ask me to assign it to somebody to do that assessment. And these forms are quite clever. They'll only let you assign them to people that have the right role / qualification. The two are kind of interchangeable. Only let you assign them to the right type of person to do that type of assessment. So to save myself some time, let's find everyone that has this type of qualification or this type of role in the process, and I'll assign it to them. So let's say I'll assign it to this person here. It's not pending anymore, it's just prompting me there to update. We're now essentially in progress, so we'll update that status and submit. So here you'll see now, as well as the eligibility check and the initial referral, we now have our first assessment in here. And that's now going to notify this assessor that they've been assigned that assessment. There may well have been probably a conversation beforehand to check that assessor was available to do it and all those other bits. Those are, I suppose, functionality that is on our roadmap that we will be introducing, maybe kind of calendars and what have you. But right now, our customer base are focusing on other areas. and that's not come up as a priority just this second. But there will, I'm sure, have been a conversation first to check that assessor is able and willing to take that case on. So that will notify Jess to say that that's happened, and Jess will be able to access all the information she needs to digitally on any device that she chooses to use, mobile phones or otherwise, and she will go off and do that assessment. So when she comes to do her assessment, she will open up that form and she will see essentially the LPS version of these forms. Form 3, this happens to be under the DOS process at the moment, but the equivalent LPS ones as and when we're allowed to show them. These forms are collaborative. So whether that means that you're going to invite consulted with people into this process, if I jump down some of these forms, there are areas in here where you have to outline people that you've consulted with and what you've considered in that process. You can invite those consulted with people into the form to play their role. You don't have to, but there are permission sets within this product that allow you to be quite restrictive on what you allow people to see and do. So say their friend from church, their sister, their brother, whatever it might be. If you want them to, you can give them a really strict set of permissions which allow them to come and play their role in this process, as well as get any updates. So they're not phoning you as a responsible body all the time, trying to get progress updates on this stuff. They have access to the status updates and they can see how the case is progressing. And get access to any forms that you want them to get access to. This also is collaborative for other reasons. So once an assessor has produced these forms, these assessments, there may well be a negotiation that can sometimes happen between the assessor and the responsible body to say, oh, can we just change this a bit? You know, we don't quite agree with this. Can you relook at this bit? You've referred to him instead of her, or all those things. And the idea being here that you can assign it back and forth between you, and a bit like Google Docs, you can be in there together, have all the audit trails, so you can see who changed what when, leave your comments, and kind of get that form into the quality assessment that you want it to be. And then all of that is saved and tracked, so you're kind of questioning who said what when. So you can save and return to them as many times as you like. So these aren't just do it in one hit or forever hold your peace. It's very much come back and return to it as many times as you need to. And reassign it left, right and centre. So if you want to just get a view from the person to do the pre-authorization review or something else, you can assign it to them for them to have a look at before you kind of agree on the final version for submission. So that's what I mean by in terms of collaborative, all sorts of use cases for it, but everyone can jump into the form and do bits in there if they have the correct permissions to do so. So we'll probably let's add another assessment in here as well to show you what that potentially looks like. So let's say this one. I'll assign it to me. So you can kind of now see how this case builds over time through the eligibility and the referrals, through the assessments, and then under LPS, be looking to move this on for the pre-authorized, potentially moving on to the pre-authorization review, or getting the AMCP involved as well. So that would then be reassigned to those signatories or otherwise, and to have a look through everything that they see here and make some sort of decision. So say adding what will be the equivalent under LPS of current Form 5, the pre-authorization review before that. Obviously, we don't have that step under DOLS at the moment, so I'll do that one. Submit, so you can see there what that will change as soon as I've completed this form here. So this form here being, yeah, we're all good, we're authorising this based on everything we have here, and we would look to complete that form. So let's open that. Oh, okay, locked that one too early. So the other thing you have here in all of this is your audit trail. So as I was saying earlier about who touched what when, in the collaborative nature of this stuff, every single form and the version and who did it, what the status was, and at what time. I open up, say, this one. It will show me what the version of, it's going to take a few minutes to compose all of those changes. Maybe my connection is really slow. Yes, it is. So under your audit trail, you have even down to kind of showing you the number of changes that happened in that version of that form, who made them at what time and what those changes were is all documented here. So you can see from a challenge perspective, the need to justify what happened when is very easy because everything is tracked in the system as opposed to it being in a spreadsheet that you're trying to unpick later on. So let's go back to that case. So you can see here now that this is authorised, and if we open that, everything we need to know about this person was in here. Obviously, we're being replaced by the LPS forms and processes when we're allowed to. So I guess that's probably largely the length and breadth of it. Another sort of bit to kind of expand on that sharing across responsible body piece is this visible to partners. So in the cases where you don't have that automatic agreement in place to share, say with your neighbours, and you've taken that conversation offline, and you've agreed, yeah, you're happy to share whatever it is about Dan, you can flip that switch and kind of say, yes, I'm happy to share this with that organisation, and these are the bits I'm happy to share. And that will then put that in a place for that responsible body to pick up and see any history and assessments that will be helpful to them. Also review dates, so we don't forget what those schedules are. It's very naggy, so you put those dates in and the system will send you out email notifications to kind of nag you to come back in and do those reviews at those appropriate times as well. The only other thing I would sort of say about this as a platform is, whilst this is a digital platform, we know that there will be certain users that don't want to engage digitally in this process. That's largely come from our discovery phase of current supervisory bodies saying that the doctors involved in this process often don't like the engagement digitally, and they're much happier to kind of scribble it on a piece of paper and send it in. So we have addressed that in this product. So, for example, if I jump into my email account, you'll see I'm getting all of these emails from the system. We've been using it over the last half an hour, and various things have come through. And this is one of the notifications that's come through saying, you've been assigned this task, Lianne. And it will give me a link to go into the platform and do it, which is what we encourage users to go in digitally and contribute. But for users that you can't force to, potentially doctors, potentially consulted with people, there will be some people that don't want to engage with you digitally. You can just reply directly to these emails and it will land that response back into the platform. So say this was the form 4 or the equivalent under LPS and you're doing that assessment. You don't want to use our digital form for whatever reason. You can just reply saying, my diagnosis is X, Y, and Z, and maybe attach some attachments to here. So it's just email, whether it's Outlook or Gmail or whatever it is that they're used to using from an email perspective. Those emails will land, they'll reply via email, and off that goes. So that response, even though it wasn't done inside the platform, will be landed back into the platform. So you always have that audit in history to evidence against. So let's just jump back to these slides. We've covered a large chunk of that platform. If there's anything that you want me to go over in more detail, please do just shout. Or if there's any questions you have about the use of the platform, then either chuck them in chat or unmute your mics and let me know. But otherwise, we'll start moving through, I suppose, some of the business case aspects. I covered the business case for Coventry earlier in that sort of early 15-minute slideshow, but we do also have on our website a blank business case. Jump onto our website. So if you want to drop your own figures in and come up, be sort of shown and played out how these savings all work, then you will find that on our website as well. So there's a blank version there. So you're always looking at what the figures are for you that would make sense. We won't ask you to sign up to our business case. This is all has to be relevant to you and it has to make sense for you as a business. So that is on there. Website actually is very, very transparent. So you'll see on here, we are on G-Cloud and there's a link to our G-Cloud listing there, as well as our pricing is publicly published also. So I'll touch on that now. Essentially, it's an annual license per responsible body and a sort of one-off initial onboarding fee as such, and that's obviously just year one cost, that isn't year on year. And then to kind of make it fair and representative for size, we say sort of pay for what you use. So per request for per authorization, per referral, however you want to look at that, there's a small charge per referral. And you guesstimate that at the beginning of the year. If you're a current supervisory body, you may well have quite a good understanding of what your caseload looks like. But if you're CCG and hospital trust, you may or may not have done that work, or it may or may not be clear what your caseload might be going forward. So we make a bit of a guess at that in the first year, and then we have a bit of a shore up at the end and look at what you actually used and sort of credit back to you anything that you haven't used. So it's very transparent and fair. We do offer a fixed cost. It's based on your kind of population size. So if that's more appealing to you as a pricing structure where it's just the fixed cost and it's based on how big you are as an organisation, we certainly have that as well. But the majority of our current prospect and customer base really like and appreciate the essentially pay for what you use type model, but we understand that doesn't suit all organisations. So I suppose that's probably everything I wanted to cover. If anyone has any questions, then please do just shout. But otherwise, thank you very much for joining us. And this session is being recorded, so I will certainly make sure that anyone that wants to has a copy. Great. Thank you very much, guys.
Thank you.
See you later. Bye.